Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We're just about done with our Lore Magic Spotlight series here. We've just got a couple more left, and today we're looking at the lore of Nehekara, hence Mr. Imperishable himself here. So we're going to be taking the Tomb Kings up against the Greenskins, and yeah, without further ado, let's get straight to it. So, Citra the Imperishable here is a legendary lord with access to the lore of Nehekara. And what exactly does the lore of Nehekara bring to the table? Well, first off, the lore attribute, something very important to remember. Similar to the lore of Vampires lore attribute, map-wide resurrects combatants, greatly replenishes hit points, and it'll heal unit models to full before resurrecting, but only lasts 7 seconds, and it's every time you cast a spell. So the idea here is that you, at least if you want to get the most value from the lore attribute, you want to spam the cheap spells. So lore of Nehekara has a few damaging spells and a lot of buff and debuff spells. I've got the two really cheap buffs here, so I can try and spam them as much as possible to get a lot of procs from the Restless Dead. So to that effect, we've got the Joff's Incantation of Cursed Blades, which gives 20% weapon and armor piercing damage to the affected unit. We've also got Neru's Incantation of Protection, which is 44% physical resistance, quite a serious defensive buff, very, very strong. And that's it for Citra, so we're going to be pouring all our magic into those two spells. Just in terms of Citra himself, we've also got the Blessed Blade of Tra, which gives him a blind effect and fire damage. The blind effect in particular can be very strong if you're in a heroic duel, just because the minus 26 melee attack and defense is very, very strong. Likewise, we've also got the Crown of Nehekara, giving him that AoE effect, 10% armor piercing, weapon damage, and 8% charge bonus. Of course, he's got the upgraded My Will Be Done, Unyielding Will, which is a huge area of effect, plus 5 melee attack and defense, and the Curse in case he gets low on health. We're backing him up with the Hero Titan here just to help the Winds of Magic regeneration rate. He's got the Spirit Conduit ability here, so improves power reserves and recharge rate. Very strong, makes this guy a nice magical support. Likewise, he's got the Spirit Leech and the Shem's Burning Gaze. We've got two Ushabti with great bows, two Nehekara warriors up front. These guys are the dual wield, kind of mid-tier skeleton infantry for the Tomb Kings. They have pretty solid weapon damage, good attack stats, not the best melee defense, but 45 armor. Of course, being skeleton units, they crumble rather than rout. We've got 4 skeleton spears, one of which is the Regiment of Renown, King Nekesh's Scorpion Legion, which Shetland Apache tells me are a very good unit. They do have 42 melee defense, which is pretty serious, and poison. That's always nice. I do believe they have more armor. Yeah, they have 45 armor instead of the 10 of regular skeleton spearmen. So these guys, you know, they're 600 points, but they seem pretty solid overall. And yeah, we've got 2 Tomb Guard with Halberd to protect the rear and to fight big nasties. And that's pretty much it. So let's take a look at the greenskins that we're facing. We've got Mangy Marauders and Death's Creepers up here in the forest. The army is going to be all Savage Orc infantry with a couple of archers here. We've got the Rusty Errors and another unit of Night Goblin archers. 2 Arachnarok spiders. Neither of them are the Regiment of Renown. We've got Azag the Slaughterer here. And it looks like he's also brought this Night Goblin Shaman. So interesting to take the 2 casters. Let's look at his spell loadout here. So he's got Sneaky Stab and an Itchy Nuisance there, with the lore attribute Sneaky Stealin', which we'll take a look at in more detail later in another video. But Azag's also brought Aspect of Dreadnought, Spirit Leech, Doom and Darkness, and Soul Blight. Interesting, so just really looking to get the buffs and debuffs and all the cheap spells. Typically, I would recommend against taking 2 casters, unless you take, you know, only 1 to 2 spells with both, but can be effective in certain situations. Let's see how my opponent does here. We're going to pull up in range and start unloading the Ushabti Great Bows onto the appropriate targets, probably the Arachnarok Queen or, sorry, not Queen, either of the Arachnarok Spiders or Azag himself would be good targets, of course. So we'll wait till they start to fly into range here. We are going to loose 1 volley on these Savage Orcs here, do some really nice initial damage, and then, yeah, my opponent dropping this Soul Blight here a little bit prematurely before his Savage Orcs have quite got into contact. It does give that nice minus 30 armor, which means the Savage Orcs will do a lot more damage, but he's casted it way too early here to where the effect is probably going to wear off before the Savage Orcs even get into contact there, so a little bit unfortunate, a little bit of a mistiming there, but looks like another big Itchy Nuisance now going off, so debuffing this entire pocket. That is going to give a negative melee attack and defense, but Citra here is going to dive in. He's dove a little bit further than I had anticipated, now getting inundated by those Ragnarok Queens, but we're going to run back And we've also dropped the, let's see here, Blessed Blade of Patras. So he's got that blind effect now. So we can see when that blind effect gets applied to these Savage Orcs, their attack stats pretty much go to 0, their weapon skills rather, and likewise when he hits these Ragnarok spiders with that effect, it's going to be pretty rough on them. We're bringing in the Hero Titan as well, the duel. It's given the old laser eyes to the spider here. Azag himself has been the focus of the Ushabti Greatbow fire so far, and we've been able to turn the flank a little bit here with the Skeleton Warriors going to be getting a nice rear charge, and I'm hoping that this is enough of a leadership debuff to send these Savage Orcs low enough that they get terror routed. Of course, once they drop their frenzy, they're no longer immune to psychology, so hopefully we can start to get a little bit of a terror rout here. We're also bringing in the Tomb Guard, start dealing with these, helping to deal with the spiders here, and we're just continuously dropping those buffs and the 2 cheap buffs that I've got on either Cetra or some of these other units. So next time he casts a spell, I'll try and catch it so you guys can see the lore attribute in action. But yeah, so far so good. I've been able to rout off the 1 spider here relatively effectively, and Cetra now getting that Incantation of Protection. So if we look, all the skeleton units map-wide should be under that effect. I don't see it quite here, but anyway, it's not the most healing in the world, but it is a little bit every time you cast one of those spells. The physical resistance is also a very nice defensive buff, particularly if you're in a situation like this, where your lord is dueling like a large monster or another lord or what have you. It can be very, very effective, but now we got the Cursed Blades here. So, yeah, again, just going to be setting off that map-wide healing effect, and if we look here, I believe it is actually still up. So, yeah, oh no, that's just the Realm of Souls. Interesting, I haven't managed to catch it while it's affecting the units quite yet. It is only about 7 seconds long, so, but yeah, so far so good. We're going to be, Azag looks like he's routing. Most of the Savage Orcs broke in a big chain rout there, so... Ooh, looks like we've got a little bit of a Shem's Burning Gaze there, making decent contact with Azag. Doesn't do the most damage in the world, but yeah, you can see it's very, very rough. Okay, now I just saw him cast that Narrow's Incantation, so we can see the lore attribute now, this one here, the Restless Dead, so it is going to be recovering the hit points of all my units here. You can see, especially like on Cetra himself, it doesn't heal a ton, but, you know, maybe 50 or so HP. So it is something, and especially if you're spamming it with that physical resistance, if your opponent doesn't have any magic damage, then it can make your lord or other units very, very tanky and tough for your opponent to take down. You can see the Hero Titan is going to be chasing off the Ragnarok Spider there, and yeah, at this point we're just kind of in the cleanup phase here. You can see the back line of the greenskins is going to be inundated here as these Gobos try and fight up against the Skeleton Warriors. Of course, Azag's in here supporting. This is going to be a little bit dangerous for him. That being said, my opponent's got his Skirmish Cav up and around and behind. They're just not doing enough damage to really make a difference here for these Ushabti Greatbows. We're still able to get enough damage out. Cetra comes in and tells Azag to go away, or maybe give back the hat or something to that effect. But again, just going to be continuously dropping those spells there. That Incantation of Protection is going to help if these Rusty Heirs decide to shoot at Cetra. It'll help protect him in that respect. Likewise, this Ragnarok Queen coming in, you know, we'll be able to protect against that as well. Dropping that now, just Incantation of Cursed Blades, just to give him some additional armor piercing and weapon strength to try and finish off this spider here. So here comes Cetra, giving the old War Sphinx breath. And that is going to shatter the spider there, and it's just a matter of time before the rest of the Greenskin forces follow suit. You can see that Ragnarok has rallied, but we're moving down the Ushabti Greatbows to deal with them. Just kind of screening out the archers at this point with the cheap skeleton spears and more. And the Savage Orcs are now fighting in the pits against, once again, against these Nehekara warriors in kind of a second formed battle line here. But the terror from my big monsters is going to be a major issue at this point for the Greenskins, especially with their loss of leadership. So, yeah, it is going to be a victory for the Tomb Kings. We're going to get that Ushabti summon in the back line here, right on top of these Gobbo archers. They're going to start giving them the absolute business. So, with that, should be pretty much it. Azag's trying to come back to the battlefield to support a little bit more, but at this point, Greenskin forces are very, very tattered, and there's just not enough left to sustain. So, well played to my opponent. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that battle. It's only one more lore of magic, I believe, after this one, which is the lore of the Little Wog. We've covered just about every other lore of magic in the game, so I hope you guys have enjoyed watching this series as much as I have enjoyed creating it. It's been a lot of fun. I've got to try out some different spells and some different lores that I don't typically take. So it's a lot of fun. We've all learned new things as well, so I hope it's been informative for you guys. In terms of the army breakdown here, single XP Chevron, only 2 kills, but that Hero Titan did a ton of damage to those spiders. Likewise, Cetra did himself as well. Ushabti, one of them got an XP Chevron, the other didn't, but they were mostly shooting at high-value targets, single model entities the whole time. Frontline, Nehekara warriors did really well, all things considered. We did hit them with a couple buff spells right at the start to help them hold up against those Savage Orcs, some of which got quite a few kills, but overall, I think Savage Orcs are a little bit underwhelming. I think in this matchup, you're better off to go with like a mix of Black Orcs, Biggins, try and bring like a more variety of infantry, you know, maybe a couple Skulkers, the Regiment of Renowned Gobos. The Ragnarok Queens can be decent here, but they're a little bit risky against things like the Necrosphinx, and you saw the Hero Titan was able to do very well in that engagement as well. But the focus of this video is indeed the lore of Nehekara, so let's take a look at it in a bit more detail here. So in terms of the Tomb Kings here, obviously they're the only ones with access to it. Grand Hierophant Khatep, which is one of my favorite legendary lords, and Cetra the Imperishable both have access to it, as does the Lich Priest lore of Nehekara. Grand Hierophant Khatep is probably the more adept caster, while Cetra is a really powerful hybrid character, very scary in melee, and has the magic, as you saw. But in terms of the rest of the spells from the lore, we've got Usirian's Incantation of Vengeance. This is a slightly similar to Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma. It is more expensive, but it does do more damage. Pretty decent spell, useful against heavy cavalry factions if you're going to be taking a Nehekara caster. I definitely would recommend it to slow down and damage cav units, especially. Incantation of Righteous Smiting is another cheap buff spell, only 7 winds of magic, 40% AP and 40% missile damage, which can be massive, especially if you're using it on like Ushabti Greatbow, for example, who's shooting at a lord. You can get some really nice value from there, and it is another cheap buff spell to get as much uptime from that Restless Dead as possible. The Incantation of the Skullstorm is one of my favorite spells. You guys have probably seen. If you haven't already, go check out on my channel. There's a video called 880 Skaven Souls for Khatep, where I use this and Khatep's Bound Vortex to excellent effect against the Skaven. It's a vortex, similar to most vortexes you've seen in the past. It does have a pretty tight area of effect, only 12 winds of magic, but it can be effective in the right situation. Last one here is this Incantation of Desiccation. It's essentially an area of effect enfeebling foe. 15 winds of magic, relatively expensive, but it does last for 38 seconds and has a 40-meter radius, so that's pretty substantial. And yeah, if you overcast it, 21 winds of magic, but that's minus 44 melee attack and 27 melee defense, so can be a very useful spell. In terms of the Skullstorm, it just has a bigger upgraded area and moves more slowly when it's overcast. Let's see here. If you upgrade the Incantation of Vengeance, it just has a greater effect on speed. Let's see here. If you upgrade the Righteous Smiting, it also gives reload skills, so something to note there. The Incantation of Protection just lasts longer if you overcast it, and the overcast for the Cursed Blades actually is very worthwhile noting. It only costs 2 more winds of magic. Of course, you do gain a miscast chance, but it does give you a plus 16 bonus versus large, which can be super useful in a multitude of situations. Probably the best spell out of the entire lore of magic, in my opinion, and it's one of the only spells I know of in the game that actually gives a bonus versus large. It may be the only spell in the game that gives a bonus versus large, so a very, very useful spell to have in your toolkit, and it's nice and cheap and spammable, so you can get plenty of procs of that Restless Dead. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. We've just got one more lore of magic left, so stay tuned for that. If you like this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification button so you know when I upload new videos. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.